You've asked me to talk about the history of my family as it's recorded in print photographs, video, or sound recordings. And I grew up in a military family. My father was in the military for over 30 years, my entire life while I was a kid growing up at home. And everything that I remember that we recorded was to basically be able to give those pictures or send those pictures to somebody else that was important in our family so that they could see what was happening with us. They could see changes in our family.
Like predominantly your father, because he was overseas so much.
However, starting at the beginning, the first film that I remember, and only film that we have of our family, is when my father borrowed a camera from somebody that he was serving with in the Marine Corps. An older gentleman who had the means to own a camera back then in the early 1960s. And he borrowed a camera because he and my mother had just gotten married, moved to Hawaii, and in the first year of their life there had their first child. And so he wanted to film the surroundings of their life, their home, what my mother looked like, what their first child was like, to send back to her family here in Haverhill, Massachusetts. And amazingly, that video has survived, and it's kind of in our entire family legend. It's like this video that everybody has seen and remembered, and it's been converted from film to video, and now it's out there on Facebook. So it's kind of amazing. It's amazing to me that it survived, because being in a military family means moving all the time and having very limited belongings and not being able to always take things with you, things getting lost, things getting damaged, and you would lose like whole photo albums because a box wouldn't be on the moving truck. You packed it at point A and you moved to point B states away, and your things would get lost. Your things would get broken. And it's just what happened. But because we were a military family and living so far away from the rest of our family, my mother's from a very big family, she made a lot of photographs and to send to her mother and her siblings. These are my kids. These are my kids that I'm raising so far away from you. These are my kids that you don't get to see very often. And so here are these periodic pictures of the entire family. So we have these groupings, and it's really kind of funny because I look back at some of these pictures and we never look happy, because it was so difficult to get all of us together, all lined up, all looking in a way that my mom wanted us to look, neat, clean, your hair not in your face. And oftentimes we're not smiling in these pictures because it's been like a family brouhaha, or somebody's gotten yelled at and told to sit down and be straight and look at the camera and smile for Grammy, kind of thing. And it's funny because there's what's in the picture, like you're saying, Ben, what's in the picture, and then there's what's not in the picture. So many times you look at a photograph and you say, who was taking that picture? If blah, 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 and you're all in it, who was actually taking the picture? So there are photos with my mom in them, with all of us kids, and sometimes it was a photographer that she hired, like some photos that you've seen where she went and had a professional photo done because she wanted to look her best to send a picture to my dad. And I think you see me with 3 of my other siblings or 2 of my other siblings, because she would, and it was very costly. It was a really big deal for her to go and have a studio photograph done, but she did it because he was so far away, and there was always that, will we ever see him again? And she also knew that when you're on a military base overseas like that, all those guys are putting these pictures up, like even in that book, The Things They Carried, you read about how that media that you're talking about, the print media,
home media, is what people carried. Like even when you see those old movies, like what the guy got in his wallet, he opens it and he's got a picture of his girl. Well, my dad had a picture of his girl, my mom, and all of his kids, everywhere that he went. And I never really thought about that, like how there were pictures of me hanging up in Japan and Korea and Vietnam and stuff like that. But think about it, it must have really happened. When you asked me to gather pictures, photographs, things that I could use to kind of spark my memory so that I could talk about growing up in a military family, it was difficult because unfortunately there isn't a lot.
we don't have the same type of thing that you'll find in a family where, you know, mom and dad got married, bought a house, had kids, and everything went in the attic, in the basement. We didn't have that experience. Everything it was almost like triage. But also, you were constantly getting rid of stuff. Like, oh, all your old toys, forget it, we can't take it with us. You know, all your old clothes, forget it, we can't take it with us. You know, and my mother would do like these household purges. And I'm sure, you know, obviously she kept a lot of photos. She kept a lot of things that were important. But you know where we really got a lot of the photos from? All the people she sent them to, especially sending them to her mother. Her parents lived in the same house for over 50 years. And when her mother died and then her father died, all the photos were there. You know, a lot of them. And the best ones, you know, because she would keep, there used to be the negatives that would come with every film development. And we used to hold those up to the light to see what the picture, because she didn't always get all the photos developed. And even if she did get them developed, she kept the ones where somebody was blinking or you were making a funny face. And the really good ones went to my grandmother or her sisters or siblings, the people that she was trying to, you know, keep informed about what was going on in her life and with her family. And that was really important. We were always living in North Carolina, Virginia, Hawaii, California, so far away from all of our cousins, and a little bit jealous of them because I got to see my grandmother a lot. But every time my father went overseas, my mother brought us up to Haverhill. And I remember living for the summer in Haverhill.
Like a main base.
Exactly. She gave us a family connection that I think is so precious now, and something that I, you know, didn't value at the time, but really value now. Because, and it's funny, because where'd you vacation when you were a kid? Haverhill, Massachusetts, not exactly a resort town, but we used to come here all the time to visit my grandparents. And there was one year my father was overseas. He was in Okinawa, and there were only 3 of us at the time. My younger brother had been born. I think my mother was pregnant with my second brother, you know, the 4th child. And she brought us to Haverhill, and it was Christmas time, and she brought us to see Santa at Jordan Marsh. And I know this photo is a black and white photo, and I remember this event. I remember not being really all that dressed up. I remember the winter and the snow, and I remember thinking that Santa was just, you know, the best thing I ever got a chance to see. And I never remember seeing that on a military base. And I never remember going to like big department stores, because we had military exchange. We had what you called the PX, you know, the post exchange. We had the commissary. These were not luxury stores. These were places on military bases that were just stocked with whatever they had. It wasn't like, you know, when you came and you got to go to Park Snows and Mitchell's and Jordan Marsh, and it was all decorated and it was all fancy. Film, cameras, film, and film developing was precious. We didn't have the money for just wasting it. There wasn't a camera that just sat around like you'd see now. The camera was put up on a shelf. It was in a box. It was something that you didn't play with. It wasn't something that could be taken out unless it was a special occasion. And sometimes that special occasion would be a birthday. You know, if you were lucky, the camera actually came out and you were supposed to smile. It was all about documenting each year as it went by, how you changed. Oh, look, she lost a tooth. Oh, look, she got braces. Oh, look how long her hair is. Yes, her hair's still red. You know, these kinds of things. And you'll notice on a lot of the photos, my mother has written things on the back, even though these photos had that white border around them that I think of old-fashioned photos as having, and they had like date stamps, which is very helpful. But there aren't very many candids. It looks like my mother tried to pose us in like little group settings. Most of the times we, you know, have a pretty little dress on. I think it's funny when I do see something like a candid shot, like that photo. This was a house at Christmas. My father was in Vietnam. There were 4 kids. My mom was working nights as a nurse, and there was hardly any furnishings in this house. And we rented this house. We called it the landlord's house. And she's actually taken a photo of the bare living room. I mean, maybe there's a couch in there, and all the presents that she was able to get us that year. And I think she was really happy and proud that she was giving us a pretty good Christmas, even though we didn't have a dad. You know what I mean? We were so far away.
So this Christmas was worth documenting.
Definitely. And it was the way that she chose to do it. Other Christmases you'll see in photos, when my dad was around, she was, taking pictures to show her mother what we looked like dressed up for the holiday. Oftentimes with something that she may have sent. Like I think these 2 dresses that we have on in this photo with my dad when I'm older were actually presents from my grandmother, that she had sent the money for so they could be picked up or something. My mother was definitely trying to document that for her. When my parents bought their audio recording machines, what do you call them? Tape recorders.
Yeah.
And they were reel-to-reel tape recorders, and they were so precious to my mom. I can remember playing with the tape, how you could pull it,
Yep.
and her having a fit, don't touch it. Don't put your fingers on it. It will ruin the sound. And she used to make these events, like maybe after dinner or after school one day, come and talk to your dad. And we didn't always want to do it. We didn't know what to say. It was hard trying to picture this man who'd been gone. I mean, when you're a kid, you're 6. If somebody's not around for a week or even a month, you kind of forget them, and you certainly don't want to talk to them. And how many times have you been in a situation where a friend of yours or a family member has tried to put a kid on the phone to talk to you, and they say, no, no, no? Well, this was worse. There was no dialogue back and forth. So I think a lot of the times when we did listen back to those tapes, it was my mom prompting us, like, what do you want to say to Dad? What did you do at school today? And you get these, nothing, not much. We drew, and you'd have your fingers in your mouth and be goofing around. So it must have been really, really hard for her. But yeah, and she was trying to record 4 kids to talk to their dad while he was so far away.
What would you guys talk about? I mean, you mentioned school and your mom would prompt you with some questions, but do you remember anything of things that you would say to him?
We would most often talk about my uncles, my mom's younger brothers, because it was really fun for us to live in Haverhill, and they lived right up the street. And Uncle Michael used to come down and babysit all the time. So we'd be like, Uncle Michael rode us on his bike. Uncle John came down and he made us sit out on the back porch because we were bad, those sorts of things. I remember once we got a new sandbox. That was a huge thing. Huge to talk about the sandbox.
So where are these tapes now?
Destroyed. Gone. I'm sure that we were moving one time and they no longer worked. They didn't have the battery backup, and it was one of those things, We're not lugging these anymore. We're going to throw them away. The tapes existed for quite a long time. I remember they came in these little plaid boxes, like Scotch boxes. But I have no idea where they are now. They may exist. They may be at my grandmother's house, which my uncle now owns. Who knows? It'd be great to find them. And I look at the families now who are in the military and have been in these wars that we've been so involved in, Afghanistan, Iraq. And every time I see even commercials now on TV that show a dad Skyping with his kid, I just think these people are so lucky that it's so wonderful that technology has come so far that you can see your dad, even though he's so far away. You can have a conversation. You can preserve the records on these media, files and discs and even Facebook. But I'm sure it extends to, families where the dad is in the news media and traveling to cover the wars and that sort of thing, or cover events worldwide, what's going on in the Middle East, whatever. And I think about those families now, and I'm not saying that it's not difficult for their parents to be so far away, but it is different. It is different now. And I think our losses, the physical things that we lost, not to mention time and being able to be with other people, but those types of things won't happen nowadays because your ability to keep them and preserve them, using the computer technology and the digital technology and all of these other things that we have nowadays, just it's going to be better for them, and it is better for them the way that they're able to live. And they won't have the losses. They don't have the physical things that need to be packed in a box, and these people who even that I'm sort of jealous of, that lived in the same house and had attics and had basements, they had floods and they had fires and they still lost things. So it's not completely like safe just because you're all in the same place at the same time, but it's different. It's just different being in a military family and growing up that way.